Okay, so let's move on with our topic. We are switching to export market research, and can anyone tell me the reason why we have to do some sort of a research on the export market, but maybe we can just buy the ticket and go there, and everybody will start buying our product? Why do we need to spend some time to learn the information about the export market, as much information as possible?
Because you're wasting your time. You don't know if there's a market there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the case. Any other reasons?
Understanding the size of that actual market you're prospecting.
Mm-hmm. And what does the size tell you?
What dollars it will indicate an overall market, and it may also offer some information in terms of segments, specialties.
Yeah, fair enough. And in its turn, this information will actually help you to understand whether your expansion to that specific export market is feasible or not. So that's the primary reason to assess the export markets versus our capabilities and versus our budget. And the first component of the export market research is the determination of the target size. You got to understand who are the buyers in the export markets and how much they're willing to pay for your product, and most importantly, where they are located in the market. So, are your buyers, let's say, are your buyers living in the cities or in rural areas, or maybe they are living in the specific states or specific areas of the country, versus the entire country or the rest of the country. There are several tools that you can apply in order to get this information, and census data is probably the first and foremost. There are census data, and every country has censuses every 10 or 12 years. These data are largely available. We'll later go through the document that's called Export Market Research Resources. That document has information. It was sent to you by email up front, and it has information where you can get this stats and data. You can also use postal services data, especially in Canada and the States. These data are available just to help you locate where your ideal customers are living in which areas, if that's applicable to you. If you are a business-to-business, more of a business-to-business seller, you can consult with business directors. There are many directors that are international, and when you have access to them, you can filter out the companies based on certain criteria, because you know who your buyer is. When you know who your buyer is, then you can apply filters and get the contacts of the companies based on the filter, based on the company size, company location, maybe some other company industry. So all those criteria that you are using to identify your ideal customer. The other question, important component of the plan, of the market research, is to understand your competitors, who your competitors are in the export market, and why the customers buy from your competitors, why your competitors are stronger, or maybe they are weaker than your company, and your product. So you should look into global and local competitors, those companies that only do business in the export market, and you should apply this framework. Anybody familiar with SWOT framework? Can anyone explain how it works? Okay, let me explain. So every time you identify the competitor, you apply this framework, and you try to identify what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, your company weaknesses versus that competitor. You also identify what are the market threats and market opportunities at that specific market. As an example, your strength as a Canadian exporter may be product quality, consistency, ability to customize. Your weakness may be the price. or may not be the price. Maybe the price will be your strength. Again, it all depends on what your target market is and who are your competitors and what kind of product they are producing or offering. Market opportunity, it could be, for example, growing population, especially for food products. It could be also the growing middle class or growing purchasing power of consumers. This may be market opportunity. Market threat, the example in the food industry could be the regulations or certifications or some limitations like quotas. Those are the examples of market threats. And are there any examples from the audience of strengths, weaknesses, threats, or opportunities? Anyone?
One of the big opportunities must be this new trade agreement that's coming through.
Exactly. Very good point.
Reducing tariffs.
Very good point. Yeah. If the country you are targeting is part of international agreements that Canada signs, this is absolutely an opportunity. Because the purpose of these trade agreements is to eliminate tariffs and other trade barriers between Canada and other markets. So yeah, that's absolutely an opportunity. Okay. Now, where can you get the information who your competitors are? Well, most of you probably know your competitors, at least those that operate in Canada and North America. But if not, then what you can do, you can consult with business directories. I put Dun & Bradstreet here, but it's not the only business directory. The only reason I put it here because I know for a fact that it's international and it has representation in most of the major markets. Well, probably not all of them, but most of the major markets are covered. You can also engage the local market research firm, but let's try not to go there. Try to look first at industry and market reports that are available, and you can get the access to many reports either in internet and in market research tools that were sent to you. We sent you a couple of links, mostly government or government-related resources of country and industry information, so please use that. If you are looking for a very specific report for your industry, if you identify that and you realize that it costs $5,000 to buy this report, try to go to your local library, or if you have somebody who is studying at the university and has access to the university library, try to ask them to help you to locate that report through the library network. Most of the market research companies, they work with libraries, so libraries buy their reports and they have them available for the general public for free. So that's the tip for you. How long have you been to library? Research. Well, maybe that's the time where you should go back. Because actually this fact is largely unknown, that they have access to market reports that normally cost money. The other question that is important to answer before you started developing export sales is to identify the reason why customers in the foreign market buy your product. This may be done through, the best way to do that is to actually ask the customers, do some sort of interviewing. It can be online poll or interviewing through social networks. If you have access to the export market, you can absolutely ask target consumers directly. You probably noticed how in retail stores, once in a while somebody comes to you and ask you to taste the product or to ask for your feedback on certain products. So you can do similar things. You're not restricted to any specific rules. It all depends on your access. If you have access to retail stores outside the country, and you can do that, that's fine. If you cannot, then you can just run the online research or put the poll on a social network and attract your ideal potential customers to fill out the research and give you information. No more than 5 questions basically, but we will focus on their reasoning, their tastes, their perception of the product. Again, your focus is to try to understand why they buy your product. And you can also look into, try to screen the news about the similar products on the export markets. There are certain tools that can help you to attract the information, to get this information relatively fast. And also, same market or industry reports, they are also good sources of information for you. Any questions, by the way, on what you've covered, Jess, before that? Anyone tried to ask customers why they buy your product? Any experience with the research? Maybe here in Canada, maybe in the States, but any experience with that? Anybody ask for a feedback? Well, you probably should start doing that. Even here in Canada. Yeah. Okay. So now let's stop here for a bit more time. Before entering any export market, you have to understand what are the incentives of your company to go to that market, and what are the barriers of entry. There are more barriers, unfortunately, than incentives, but that's what we're here for, to learn more about those barriers and understand how we can address those barriers. But let's start with incentives first. We brought a point of international trade agreements. So they are the incentives, if you will. If your target country is part of these agreements, then you have better chances succeeding in that market. I think one of the products that we've looked at earlier, I think one of the country was I think in the 3rd place was Colombia or Chile. I think in one of the examples Chile was in the 3rd place. One reason why this happened maybe because Canada and Chile recently signed free trade agreements and removed barriers. Canada has a number of multilateral and bilateral agreements. Example of multilateral agreement is what? Any ideas on which countries Canada signed multilateral agreement? No, there you go. So that's one example. This is the international agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States that pretty much eliminates any barriers and any tariff barriers. There are still some non-tariff barriers in meat products, for example, but that's the other story. Canada also has a number of by the way, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the new agreement that was recently signed, is also a multilateral example of multilateral agreement. Bilateral agreements exist with countries like Colombia, Chile, Panama, Costa Rica, a number of other Latin American countries. There are trade agreements between Canada and Korea, and in the Middle East, it's Israel and Jordan. There's an inventory of all these trade agreements, and we will get to the practice. So I'll show you where you can find the information on which countries are in agreements with Canada. So maybe your target country is one of those. Now let's talk about the barriers. Political situation may be the barrier. You may not really want to deal with the countries where the political situation isn't stable. Keep in mind, though, that in many countries, political situation is more or less fine up until the time when it's time for election. So you may have 5 calm years and 1 very bad year. So, and you can find information on the political cycle of the countries in the document that was distributed. I'll explain more about that document. You'll find the source where you can get the information about political situation.
Igor, just on your observation on multilateral, bilateral agreements, I find that that's something, and I'll include myself in that. Often as Canadians, we don't know a lot about those agreements and what they actually do for you as a business operator. And there's great resources out there from the provincial and federal government. I mean, I'll put a plug in for you guys. I know Shane Jaffer with the Alberta government here is doing a session on TPP next week. So this next week, tomorrow, thank you. So tomorrow there's TPP, what it means for you, what it means for your business. So, you know, they've gone through and scanned that agreement from top to bottom, and like they're going to give you a very practical, concrete guide as to what it means. Because I find, you know, we know that those exist in the ether, but we don't actually know what they mean for our business. So I just thought I'd plug that in as well.
How far is it from here? I suggest we all go there tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. The room,
Yeah, I wish it was on Friday.
Something actually in addition to see that as well in the new year, both of them from Alberta, so we'll keep this week posted on that as well.
Oh, by the way, you brought point of CETA. There is also an agreement between Canada and European Union. It was signed, I think it's signed a year ago or so, but it's not enforced yet, unfortunately, because European Union has to translate it to 27 different languages and have it approved by every single member. So that's going to take some time. But at least we have the principal agreement, which is good. Maybe in a couple of years it will fully work, and then Canadians will have better access to European market. Now customs duties and local taxes, they are also trade barriers. The foreign markets may apply high duties on your products. It may not really be your issue or your barrier. Depending on how you structure the deal, it may be the responsibility and the headache of your buyer. However, the reason why you need to know that in advance is because if you realize that your buyer faces higher tariffs, maybe you wanted to make a discount to that buyer to incentivize your buyer to buy your product. So that's the reason and practical reason why you need to know what are the trade barriers and tariffs in the other market. Canadian export controls and regulations, they exist for food products and agri products. In order to be allowed to export food products from Canada, you have to comply with certain regulations. Most of these regulations are managed by CFIA, Canada Food Inspection Agency. Also, at some point, the Canadian Grain Commission is involved if you are dealing with grains and seeds. Typically, that's it. In very special cases, some other organizations play their role in regulating Canadian export of agri-food products. You should just understand that it's okay. There's no goal to limit your ability to export from Canada. Canada only wants to make sure that the food products and agri products that are exported, they are of highest quality, and that's why there are certain procedures in place. There are certain compliance. There's a compliance procedure, and you have to comply with the regulations. And we'll get to the regulations later on specifically when we cover the market research resources. But keep in mind that most of the food products and agri products are regulated. Their exports are regulated. Yeah. But not only they have to comply with Canadian requirements, but they also have to comply with the requirements of foreign markets. And in most of the cases, there is some sort of a control or measures that apply by foreign countries to food products and agri products. And it may be health and safety regulations or any additional certifications that the foreign market may request. For example, if you talk about meat products, some countries demand that the facilities are certified according to their standards versus Canadian standards. So depending on your situation, depending on your target market, we'll figure out in the afternoon which controls apply to you, and also who can help you to get the information about these controls, which is on the next slide. Quotas, sometimes they are applicable. Many countries have quotas on sensitive agri and food products. We have to make sure that your target market doesn't have those quotas. If your target export market has quotas, then we should identify who owns these quotas. By the way, quotas, I should have explained to you, quotas are the physical limitation of the volume that you can import to any given market. Canada, for example, has quotas as well for products like cheese. It's one of the examples. There's limited amount of cheese that can be imported to Canada. So you faced it, right? Okay. How do you address that? By the way? Did you buy a quota, or you work with those companies that have quotas?
No, we don't work with the clubs here and all.
Oh, right, because your cheese is local,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you don't import cheese, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the similar case may be in the other market. Is that clear so far? Okay. Other two potential barriers, it's a very rare case that they are applied for Canadian products. But just to give you more information about those potential duties, anti-dumping duties are applied to the products that are traded below market value. It's very hard for a Canadian product to be traded below market value. It's, the cost of production are pretty high here, so I haven't heard of any single case that this duty applied to Canadian product. Countervailing duties are those that are applied against direct subsidies. Again, very rare case for Canada, and actually that's the reason why agencies like EDC, they don't provide subsidies, because otherwise you could have been subject to additional duties, and you don't really need that. Now, where can you get information about these trade barriers? As I mentioned, the CFIA is your #1 resource. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada is the other resource, and Alberta Agriculture and Forestry is the source that is probably closest to you. So they have specialists that can help you to determine what are the barriers that exist and what sort of compliance procedures exist in Canada that you have to follow. And they also have market representatives that are knowledgeable about certain export markets. And they will be able to help you to put together the list of regulatory requirements of those markets. If you are not successful in that and you still need more information, what you can do, you can look into the local legislation, specifically customs tariff or customs law. Sometimes it's difficult because it's not necessarily, these documents are not necessarily in English language. Other than that, Trade Commissioner Service of Canada is the other source of information. Anyone familiar with Trade Commissioner Service of Canada? Okay, then we're in the right place. So Trade Commissioner Service is also part of Department of Foreign Affairs, whatever they call themselves now. But the point here is that their mandate is they are basically government officials, and their mandate is to promote Canadian exports overseas. They are physically located in most of the major markets where Canadians export, and they can provide you the market information and intelligence, as well as the information about tariffs and other barriers that exist for Canadians in those specific export markets. In the resources that you will or you have received by email, and we'll go through them later, I put several contacts of the trade commissioners, where and how to find trade commissioners. There are several commissioners that are dedicated to agri and food sector. So you have better chances in getting this information if you contact them directly versus just calling the general phone number. This service is free because it's a government service, so you're more than welcome to use it. If you're unsuccessful, then your last resource could be either local law firms or customs brokers or customs consultants. They can also help you for a fee. But try to explore free resources first of all, and then if you're not successful, you may try consulting or legal help. Any questions on barriers or the information or sources of the information?
Just saying, if it was me,
Mm-hmm.
my money, I would want to pay someone like a broker to make sure I'm doing it right. rather than to try to untangle a very convoluted web
Mhm.
of duties and customs and, you know, and especially if you're a new exporter.
Yep.
I would put that brokerage at the
Mhm.
top of the list before I would put Canadian Border Services Agency. Just saying,
Mhm.
like, and maybe that's a ill-founded personal perception, but yikes.
Oh, that's absolutely right, actually. What we always teach you exporters and importers, as well as importers, is that it's not your primary job to know and to be able to fill up all this paperwork. Your focus should be on business development. Your focus should be on identifying customers and negotiating. Those are your key duties, if you will. Everything else, all the paperwork, if you can outsource it to the customs brokers, to shipping companies, to whoever are consultants in like agricultural, there are a couple of companies I've seen that offer some consulting service to agri-and-food sector. I encourage you personally to do that, and please don't teach yourself how to fill out the customs declaration. It's not your business.
I would echo that. I think, some large companies, once they've been in the export game, they all have their own logistics department, but as SMEs, leverage the experts. And I think CBSA used to have if they had a good outreach program and they had people available, but they largely taken that away. So you don't get advice from CBSA per se, right? So that's a good comment.
Yeah, and again, I just was talking with an Alberta agriculture person, and she was relating a story of exporting something, and their destination country was Greece or something, but there was an ingredient in the food product that was contraband in Greece if it came from Canada. So they had to land it in Britain first, and then cross-land it into Greece. And if it came from Britain, even though it was still product of Canada, because it was landed in Britain, it could go. And there's a little idiosyncrasy that if you were doing this yourself, it just,
Mhm.
it's complicated.
Yeah.
So,
That's why you do that beforehand.
yeah.
Mhm. Allow yourself extra time to do that.
Well, and work it into your pricing model.
Yep, absolutely.
Because again, sometimes professional advice is one of your most valuable input costs of your product. Don't just think that your raw materials and the things in your plant are your cost. That's part of your production.
Absolutely.
And make sure there's a line item in your costing structure for that.
By the way, speaking of customs brokers, first of all, does everyone understand who customs brokers are and what their role is? So, just for everybody's understanding, customs brokers, they are professionals, could be companies or individuals that are licensed, which is important, and their role is to assist in filing paperwork for export and import. Now, they have different specializations, obviously, but what's more important is that they are licensed. In Canada, you cannot be a customs broker without a license, and they have liability insurance. You cannot start practicing as the customs broker if you don't have a liability insurance. So if they make a mistake and then you are subject to additional duties or penalties, then you can claim your losses. Any other question on that topic, on barriers? The only thing I want to ask you is don't be afraid of it. The list, especially the one that's on the previous slide, may look dramatic or may look scary, but there is a proverb saying that you eat elephant piece by piece, right? So try to break them down. Don't try to address all the barriers. address one at a time and get help if this help is available. And you will, in the end, you will realize that it's not actually that bad. Okay, so let's move on. The infrastructure is the final component of your export market research. Especially, it's important in agriculture and food products. Your products may be subject to special treatment. For example, if you're dealing with meat products, obviously they have to be refrigerated. Grains and seeds, they have to be isolated from the moisture. Whereas if it's canned product, for example, there's certain temperature control regime that still has to be applied to make sure that cans can sustain and the product inside is still in a good shape. At this stage, you have to make sure that the infrastructure exists in the export market to be able to accept your product and to make sure that your product will survive, will stay as good as it used to be in Canada, up until the time that your product is consumed or sold to other buyers in the market. And it may not be easy to find this information from the other sources or reports. Maybe not. The best way is to ask your buyer, your potential buyer. If you have requirements to your products, to the product treatment, then ask your buyer if there's an infrastructure in place to make sure that the product quality is good and will stay good after the unloading. Can you want to give examples of special treatment requirements of their products? Anyone needs products to be refrigerated all the time? Absolutely. Anyone needs to avoid moisture? Yeah, there you go. Anyone needs heating? With oil though, can it freeze?
Prevention of freezing.
Yeah. So you might want to heat. Okay, so let's look right now on the example. I'd love to take one example from the audience, and what I'll also ask you to do is to open the workbooks. So what we'll do for next 40 minutes or so, 30-40 minutes before the lunch, we're going to go through the workbook, and we'll go through one example from the audience, just very briefly. And just to explain how it works, do we have, sorry? Oh, sure.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay, just a pause. How many? Yep.
Ready?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any volunteers from the audience? Okay, very good, very good. So let's work through that example. Oh, you had a question? Or? You volunteer, very good. So we have banana chips, right?
Yeah.
As a product,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Yeah,
good, good.
yeah,
Right. So the workbooks that you see right here, the purpose of this workbook is to facilitate the selection of the product, selection of the market, and market research. I broke down the whole research process into relatively easy to answer questions. please use this framework for today, and later on, after you're done with this in this workshop, apply the same structure, apply the same framework to maybe select other products and select other markets. But today, at least, let's go through that, and we'll have everybody in the afternoon. We expected to do their work, and then we'll go through the workbook again. Right now, we're focusing on workbook day 1 only. Workbook day 2 is page 10, if I'm not mistaken. But for now, it's just day 1. All right. So the first question that you see here on the first page is your motivation, your reasoning. I'll try to answer the question why you are developing international business, why you're developing export business. And I don't expect you to answer right now. You may take some notes, but the purpose of this exercise specifically just to give you an idea on what the potential answers may be and how to interpret the questions. So, why is it you develop your export business, for example? Why did you interested in export markets versus Canada?
Well, when we started our business, the dollar was hard, and our plants, anyways, most of my products is bought overseas, so the U.S. dollar we lost 30% by having our product here. So it's a base of survival, and then that's one, because of currency. And number 2 is we just don't, unfortunately, I lost a couple big players in the market, and Canada is only so big. So my problem is you can't keep on going back to the same players, you have to expand elsewhere. So it's mandatory for our company to do this in order
Very
to
good.
survive.
Very good. So this reason, I think it's the most popular reason in Canada why businesses are looking for export market, is because Canada is too small for them. It may be your case, maybe not, but this is one of the most popular reasons. Again, I encourage you to do your own thinking and answer this question. Not from the point of what you've heard, but try to be honest with yourself and answer this question. Question number 2, unique selling proposition. So this is the unique reason why customers will buy your products, and what are those reasons? We discussed quality, we discussed flavor, we discussed ability to customize, we discussed delivery timelines. So whichever is applicable to you will be your selling proposition. Question number 3 is split between business-to-business buyers and business-to-consumer buyers. Depending on your case, you may choose to only address one of those, or in some cases, just think about that. Even if you are selling to other businesses, there are still consumers in the end that will consume your product. And try to think who's the end buyer, who's the end user of your product, and try to identify the reasons why they buy. Oh, actually no. In this case,